So I'm not sure how well known I am, but I have been around a long time, as you can tell by my my hair. So sometimes if you're just always there, people say, "Oh, she must be a national figure," because everywhere I go, she's there. So that's my goal. So gosh, you guys are really well. I'm delighted to be here, and you are really lucky to be on such a beautiful campus. I will talk a little bit about Quality Matters, but one of the things you should know is that we are a virtual organization. So we're small, have 36 staff, but we don't have a home. We actually, our international headquarters, because we do have institutions all over who participate, but our international headquarters is one of those little executive suite things in Annapolis, Maryland, that nobody works out of, but there's a shared receptionist, and so that's our address. But we're virtual, so anytime I get an opportunity to come to an actual campus and put my eyes on real students and real faculty, it's really a treat. So I really appreciate coming here. So I am going to meander a little bit because I'm going to start off with talking about a little bit about the landscape of online learning, because one of the things about Quality Matters is we work with well over 1,100 academic institutions, mostly in the U.S., but some internationally. And they represent the full breadth, the full spectrum of universities and colleges in the U.S. And so, our big joke is we have 1,100 institutions, and there's 1,100 ways that institutions participate with us. So I thought, we kind of have a unique perspective in where we sit about what's going on in online education. So everything I talk about to you, not all of it will be 100% relevant to your particular situation, although I do have a little data that you might resonate with. But I wanted to put this in the landscape of what's really going on in online education. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about quality, but particularly the key role of faculty, because what our philosophy is that, quality is job one, and it's faculty's job is to protect the quality of the academic experience for students. And so we want to engage faculty in the process where and how we can. So a lot of the tools and the processes that we have developed are built around the idea that faculty are engaged in the process. So having said that, I'm not going to engage in a very esoteric discussion about quality, but I did want to put up a pretty picture because I knew you'd be eating lunch, and it would just be a nice kind of entry to what we're going to talk about. But one of the challenges when you're talking about quality is making sure that you articulate it in a way that you can get broad agreement about what is quality. And so, if I had this with this slide, most people would look at this and say, that's a beautiful photo, right? I think I could have agreement. Once we start parsing out what makes that beautiful, we'd come out with all different kinds of criteria. So it's really difficult to be, the work to identify the criteria or standards around quality is really challenging, but we've been at it a long time now. So we've been at this really since 2003, and have really developed a broadly shared understanding, at least as it comes to online courses and course design. So the other reason I put up that flower is because this is sort of the, we're focused on quality, and that's the goal, right? But in online education, there's this growing narrative about digital disruption. It's not just in education that you see this either. But I don't know whether you hear this, feel it, or see it, because your campus and your institution is a little bit isolated from some of what's going on in higher education at large. But this idea of digital disruption, changing the university as we know it, changing faculty's role in the university, and technology replacing faculty, that is it's kind of a ugly but misleading narrative that's out there, but it's a strong one. And so one of the purposes is of my even showing this, and where I'll circle back to, is really to think about the way that you take ownership of that as faculty, and the way that your voice really does need to be heard in the discussion as champions of faculty, as champions of quality, and the ways to think about that as we actually are moving to, I would say, technology-enhanced education. And online is a big part of that, but that won't be the only way that won't be the only source of potential disruption for us. So to paint that landscape a little bit more broadly, Quality Matters has partnered with EduVentures, which is a research and consulting firm in the field, to put out a survey that we call the Changing Landscape of Online Education. So this is the big picture that I want to portray. And the co-directors of that project are Dr. Ron Lagan, who is our Quality Matters Executive Director Emeritus and the Emeritus Provost at University of Baltimore, and Richard Garrett, who is the Chief Research Officer for EduVentures. And Dr. Fredrickson is a contributing editor to the survey. So this is looking at what's going on in online education in terms of the scope, scale, planning, management, and direction of online programs. So what's unique about this survey is this is a survey of chief online learning officers. And I won't go too much into that because that's Dr. Fredrickson's field of work. But those are the respondents. So there's a single institution that's represented as the data point here from these 280. There's no duplicates, right? So that's 280 institutions that are represented by the Chief Online Learning Officer at that institution. And we've done, this is just our third year of doing it. And as you can see, our numbers are really going up, so we anticipate that trend to continue. We need to obviously enlarge the survey, but there's enough participation now that really the type of institutions are reflective of the general landscape in education right now. So just in general, this is what's happening in the U.S. higher education in terms of enrollment. So you're in an enviable position in that you're a highly selective institution and you don't have an enrollment issue. But overall, nationwide, there is an enrollment issue, and it has to do with student demographics. So the traditional student demographic, the 18 to 22-year-old, is declining, and this is having significant impacts on enrollment nationwide. And of course, there's other factors that are impacting it right now, but demographically speaking, this will continue. So for all students, there's been an enrollment decline, right, between 2012 and 2016. And for those, if you separate out those students who are not doing anything, not involved in any online or distance courses, the decline in that population is over 8%. But then if you flip that over and you look at what about students who are enrolled in at least one online course, those numbers have gone up almost 25%. And then if you look at students enrolled exclusively in online courses, even more, 29%. And then in some, 20.9%. So the trend is here, right? That this online is not going away. And it's not just, it's not only adult students that are taking online courses. That in many of these situations, it's on-campus courses who'll mix, right? Who will do the on-campus courses and then take a few online courses. And so there's it's pretty diverse in terms of who is actually making up the growth in online. So this is spring 2017 to spring 2018, fully online enrollment trends. And so this is broken down into the different types of institutions. And so if we want to look at mid-sized private four-year nonprofit institutions, and the blue is percentage increase in online enrollments. That's just from spring 2017 to spring 2018. And this is based on the institutions that participated in the survey, by the way. The first slide I showed you was IPED's national data, and this is from the survey. So, but across the board, except for the low enrollment, online enrollment category, everybody is seeing growth. In terms of the blend between, or whether institutions are doing fully online courses or blended courses, most of the institutions in the survey are focusing on fully online courses. That's the majority, rather than blended. So the categories here are fully online, online, blended. There's a balance between both, which is the red category, blended, and then no emphasis. And so 91, in the three categories of institutions, this time we lumped we separated the respondents into community colleges, regional public four-year, but it also includes private four-year, it's that space, and then enterprise level. Enterprise level are how we decided to group the institutions that have 7,500 or more enrollments in online. So those are the ones who are teaching significant numbers of their students in the online. So those are the three categories, and you can see that in the community college space, the fully online, 56% of those responding said their institution is focusing fully online. And only 5% said blended. And then in the regional public and private 4 years, 75% are focusing fully online. And then only 3% fully blended, and then 3% mixed. And then at the enterprise level, as you would imagine, 91% of that population is focused exclusively on online. And so this is the case this first slide was online courses, how they focus in their online courses. This next slide is how they're anticipating the growth in their programs, their fully online programs. And so the growth here is, the majority of respondents are saying that they intend that their fully online programs are going to grow. 64% say that their fully online programs are going to grow by 1 to 4 programs. And then another 19% anticipate growing by 5 to 9 programs, and then 8% growing by 10 programs. So the landscape is there's a lot of growth happening in the online space in particular. There's a lot of program growth, and there's increased enrollment, so there's a lot of activity and a lot more. I won't talk about it now, but there's actually starting to be a lot more competition in the field. But so this is all focused on purely online programs and purely online courses, when in fact, if you're talking about the adult learner space, which most of these institutions are having to focus on now because of the deficit in the demographic changes in the population, most learners prefer blended programs to fully online programs in the ages that start from 22 to 24. So it's not that, we didn't ask about the traditional 18 to 22-year-old population, but beyond that. And this is from another EduVentures survey that we pulled in here. So the red line at the very top really shows that even at the age of 22 to 24, the majority of students are preferring blended programs. And that actually just goes up a little bit as ages go up. Even the fully on-campus programs, preference for fully on-campus, starts off about the same level as the preference for blended, but then it goes down rapidly as ages increase until like age 55 to 64, and it takes an uptick. And so the purple line is mostly online, and this is actually was a little surprising to me, actually, that there's still a strong interest in mostly online that persists over the age range. But overall, what this is telling us is students prefer blended courses, but we are not, as a field, we are not focused on producing blended courses and blended programs. We're focused on online fully. So why are we doing this as a field? So we asked about the motivations for program expansion. As you can imagine, they're about increasing enrollment, right? That's many institutions are looking to online education to help them bolster their enrollment numbers. So increasing online enrollment was the number one rationale for why they're doing this. Responding to student demand was second. But increasing online enrollment was number one across all of those institutional categories, right? Public 4-year, private 4-year, says public, I just noticed. That's an error. One of those is it's public 2-year, public 4-year, private nonprofit 4-year, and for-profit. Everybody is increasing programs because of enrollment. But I have to say, what's important to us at Quality Matters, and I hope to you, is that the reasons for innovation are different than the motivations for putting programs online. So when we ask the respondents, why are you looking at the technologies you're looking at? Why are you interested in bringing to your campus and into your courses different types of technology? Number one reason was to increase student success. So, and then number two, actually, it was the most noted second reason in that list, was we asked them to pick their top three, was to improve the faculty experience. And so, again, this is the population that we're serving, but I think that's right on the money, right? So if we're going to be using technology in our classrooms, if we're going to be putting courses and programs online, we ought to be concerned first and foremost, right, with student success in our selection of those technologies. Another thing to note about the work that's happening online is how courses are being developed. You know, when Quality Matters started in 2003, the only model really for course development was faculty took their course, they worked on it on themselves, they created an online course, and they put it online. There really wasn't much in terms of instructional design help, but really instructional design as a field was not well known or well utilized on campus, so faculty were going it alone. And so when we developed the standards and the tools and the processes, it was with the idea that this was a support for faculty who were on their own, right, in doing this work. And since that time, we have seen the evolution of the field of instructional design, the profession of instructional design, and how that's being used on campuses. So this slide talks about, these are the patterns we noticed in how institutions are supporting their faculty and developing online courses. So there's the category of faculty working independently. That's the original model that we were built on. And that's the, you can see that that's really changed over time. So I would say in 2003, it was, probably 80% of schools, that was the model. Now, in 2018, it's the minority model in terms of faculty working completely independently and doing this work. Faculty having optional ID support, which is the red, that depends on the type of institution, how prevalent that is, whether it's, they have it, but it's optional. And so in the public 2 years, that's the dominant model, right? And part of that is resources for the community colleges, in that they typically don't have enough instructional design support to ensure that all faculty have someone to work with them to help them develop the courses. The green is where faculty are required to use an ID before they can put their course online. And the purple is where they're actually working in design teams, but that's how they do it. So that's usually the model where the faculty is the subject matter expert and they're working with a team of instructional designers and multimedia folks to help them put that online. And as you can see, the two types of institutions that are more likely to use the design team approach are the very large enterprise institutions who are doing a lot with online and have invested in all of those, and the for-profits. And the for-profits, by the way, are a very small percentage of the survey population. It's not a good time for for-profits, and they've seen a lot of enrollment decline, and they have not participated so much in this survey. But the interesting thing, so this is the development pattern, right? So for private nonprofit four-year institutions, there's a mix between faculty. There's still faculty working independently to develop their online courses. There's faculty have optional ID support, and faculty are required to use ID support. So there's a real mix, and we wondered if there was any difference in those courses based on what your development model was. So we tried to look at that very crudely in this, so far in this study, by just sort of taking that population and saying, okay, if we separate the institutions that have required ID or team support in the development of courses from those that there isn't any, or it's purely optional, the faculty would have to request support. If we separated those two populations, and then we looked at their response to this question that we had in the survey, we asked them about the level of student interaction in their courses to assess that. And so the categories were lots of interaction, some interaction, or little or no interaction. And so what came out is there was actually a difference in whether those chief online learning officers felt that their courses had a lot of interaction or not. And so 69% of the institutions where instructional design or an instructional design team is required in the development process, 69% of those said they thought that their courses had a lot of interaction. And then only 42% in the category where that support was absent or optional. So just trying to get a sense of what is the impact of ensuring design support for the creation of online courses. We also looked at the questions that we asked about what kind of variation was there with technology and pedagogy in the courses. This is kind of a complex slide, so I'll try to summarize this a little bit. So, those institutions who are requiring instructional design support were more likely than the others to say that there was little variation in technology and little diversity in pedagogy, although you can see that it's still a minority who are saying that there's little diversity in pedagogy. And then the flip side is true, that for those who didn't have any instructional design support, or it was optional, they were more likely to report that there was major pedagogical diversity and wide technical variation. And so this is a little murkier to talk about in terms of whether that's good or that's bad. But I will say for students, it's a much better learning experience when they move from course to course and they're not having to relearn a whole new navigation and new technology tools and new approaches. That's a barrier to student learning. And so in that sense, I would say it's an advantage to have the support. And then we had a question about performance, about perceptions of student performance, whether that performance was better in the online courses versus the face-to-face courses. So that was the question. And so when we separated that out, you'll see that still a minority and no real difference in the two categories between support and no support. A minority indicated that it was better, like the online student performance was better than the on-ground students. So there's no real difference in those two categories, and that's a low percentage. But 59% of those respondents who are at institutions where there's required significant ID support said that that the performance of the students were the same. So no significant difference between online and on-ground student performance. And so again, just another look at what differences could instructional design support have on the development of quality courses. So this is really what quality matters. A lot of the standards that we put out are about removing barriers to student learning. And so I know that we have institutions that use those standards in all kinds of different ways, but all of the standards are based on research, educational research about how students learn, about student learning. And so one of the things that we know in an online course is the way it is designed can be a real barrier to students getting into the content and interacting with the faculty. And that we know in terms of designing that course, there are ways to remove those barriers, right? So that's a big focus for us, and a lot of the standards that we promote is to reduce those barriers to students and the frustration and the anxiety that come along with it that's detrimental to student performance. And then, of course, we also are concerned about engagement of students in the online classroom. And so a lot of the standards are around designing that course in ways that will help the students engage and be active learners in that space. So for Quality Matters, and I'll tell you a few things about Quality Matters now, is our mission is to improve online learning to achieve student learning outcomes. So we're trying to, at the end of the day, improve online learning so we can achieve student success. So that's the mission and why we do what we do. We are Quality Matters because we're talking about standards and we're talking about faculty workshops around how to design courses and how to teach online and all of those input variables. It's hard to draw that line between the use of Quality Matters and whether you retain a student over 4 years, because there's lots of things that happen to a student, in their educational experience. But we have developed those based on student learning, and so our focus is on the student learning piece. And so those are our, if we're thinking about quality in an online course, we can kind of carve out different components for quality, and that's what that online pie represents, that the course design, the way the course is taught or the course delivery, the content, the institution's infrastructure, the LMS, faculty preparedness for teaching online, and students' readiness or preparedness. All of those things impact the quality of the student experience in that course. And we started out, Quality Matters started off focusing on the design piece. And by the way, this isn't intended to represent the relative importance or impact of any one of those pie slices, because I think we would probably all agree that the teaching or delivery piece should be biggest. But the design piece is really important, because if you think about course design as how you sort of pre-plan to teach your course, it's part of instruction. And it's really important to prepare that in ways that are consistent with what we already know about student learning in terms of the research. So for QM, again, as I said in the beginning, we're a very faculty-centered program. So we have the rubrics for course design, and if you haven't seen one, I have a few standard sets in my bag there. And around those rubrics or standards, we have the trainings, we have a course review and certification process, because Quality Matters was started in 2003 for interinstitutional quality assurance, because it was a consortium of schools that wanted to seat share, wanted to let their students take each other's courses. And even though they were in a consortium, they didn't trust the quality of the courses that the other institutions provided. So they needed a way to do this. So they actually wrote and got a FIPSI grant to support a 3-year project to develop the standard sets, the research-based standard sets, and the protocols to do the review and an initial training. But it was because of that need to benchmark the quality. So from the beginning, we've been certifying courses as a mark of a shared understanding of quality. So anytime you see a Quality Matters course with a Quality Matters certification mark, it means that particular set of standards applied in a particular way with trained reviewers. The course went through that process and they met the standards in that process. And so it is that mark is that shared metric for shared understanding of quality. But we do continue to have the research piece behind Quality Matters is really important. Those standard sets get reviewed and updated every 3 years, and it is a laborious process. But what comes out of that is a lot of, if you go to our website, let's do this here, we have a research library, and this is an open library, and it's, I think we have over 1,000 articles and annotated bibliographies in there. And they're aligned to, of course, each of our standards. So if you want to know what's the research that supports that standard, you can find it. But if you're just doing research in the field and you want to research engagement and online education, you can go there and you can pull up and use that as a resource. And we have our the literature reviews that we do to support the rubric every year are up on our website. And what we're trying to do is support institutions to do their own research around what they're doing in the online space, because the courses don't belong to Quality Matters. We're what's that company, BASF? We don't make the products, we make them better. So we don't make the courses, right? We don't engage, we don't do the course design for institutions. We provide the standards, we provide the faculty training on how to teach online or to develop courses, and we do the reviews. The people who do those reviews are faculty who have gone through and become a peer reviewer, certified peer reviewer, certified master reviewer. And I think you have a few here, right? Do we have any certified reviewers? A few of you, right? So the Quality Matters organization, I was told recently you need to start calling yourself QMHQ to separate it from what's going on in the community. But none of my staff do any of those reviews. Those are all faculty, teaching faculty. You have to be a current online instructor to be able to be a reviewer with Quality Matters. And so we have a database of, I don't know, anywhere from, we have over 3,500 and probably closer to 4,000 or 5,000 reviewers in our database and organized by their subject matter expertise. So we have a 3-person review team that reviews every course, and there's they have to be certified, and there's particular roles that they have to play, and at least one subject matter expert has to be on that course review. We don't ask for 3 because we're aware that when a student takes that course, they're not going to be an expert in the course, otherwise they wouldn't be taking it. So we ask the faculty to take the learner's point of view when they're applying those standards. And so it's really useful to have somebody in there for whom that material is foreign, right? Because they are more able to see it through a learner's eyes. So we're very careful about these protocols that we use. As I mentioned before, we've got institutions in 12 different countries. That's not really, well, it's not accidental, it wasn't purposeful, because what's happening in some of the other countries who are now starting to take online seriously, They're where the U.S. was 10 years ago, and they're trying to answer the quality question. And so they don't have a handle on it, and so they come to us. So we've got a kind of a broadening community here of folks that are doing this work. And that's those are the countries that we're in. You'll notice we'll probably have, in terms of the continents, we're probably going to add, Africa to this. We're talking to a group of schools in South Africa. But you notice Europe is not on there. And one of the reasons for that is they're not new to online in many of those countries, and they have stood up their own national standards for quality. And I just had a call with somebody from Norway yesterday, as a matter of fact, about this. And so, there may be opportunities because typically national standards are very broad and ours are very specific, but we're not pursuing that because the need isn't there. The need is in these other countries who are standing up, who are engaging in online education. And that's interesting that in China and Saudi Arabia are two countries where there's a real motivation there for online education and trying to do it the right way. So there's a lot going on. So I'm going to leave you with and hopefully you'll have questions or observations to share, but a little bit about the impact of the process that we use. Now, when I say this, keep in mind that not every institution will engage their faculty in doing these course reviews. Typically, at our one institutions, that's not what happens. That's not how we're used. We're used in different kinds of ways in those institutions. But this is, as I mentioned, when QM was first started, we saw ourselves as a faculty tool to get faculty involved in vetting those courses. And so in this process that we've been doing this since, I guess the exit surveys probably only have been done since 2008, maybe. At the end of every course review, there's a survey, and we ask the faculty member whose course got reviewed, and then we survey the 3 reviewers on that team, again, all faculty, and then there's a course representative, a person at the institution that facilitates it. And we asked them a lot of questions, but we asked them, as a result of your participation in this process, are you or have you gone back and made changes in your online course? CR is the course representative, the faculty member who, that was a change in nomenclature because not everybody who is now involved in the lead on a course is a faculty member because of those course development models I was telling you about. So, but think about that as the faculty whose course got reviewed, the CR. And then PR is the peer reviewer's response. So about 86% of the faculty whose course got reviewed said, yes, I've gone back and I've made improvements in my other online courses, not just the online course that got reviewed. The peer reviewers said the same thing. As a result of serving on this review, I went back and I improved my own online courses. When we did a content analysis, we asked for a lot of feedback and write-in data, and we did a content analysis of it. It turned out there were 2 reasons for that, and the 2 reasons might be more relevant for you than the participation on the review piece of it. But they said, we never get to see somebody else's course. And by participating in this process, we actually got a lot of ideas. The person who did the content analysis called it idea shopping, which was unfortunate because nobody takes anything from anybody else's courses. But it inspired them, right? Oh, I see how they handled this. This would work. I could do something like this in my class. So it was a very powerful thing for them. So that was one. The other was, I think, just guilt, right? So they as they were going through somebody's course, it made them reflect on their own and thinking, I probably didn't do a good job on this in my course. I need to go back in and make those changes while I'm thinking about it, kind of thing. And so it was, so it has a big impact. So I think 81% of the peer reviewers said they went back and made those changes. But interestingly enough, they also went back to what they were doing in their face-to-face courses. Not all of the reviewers teach in both modalities, but of those that did, in 80% of the cases, the person whose course got reviewed went back and changed what they were doing in the face-to-face classroom. Part of this is because the person whose course gets reviewed, it isn't just a you met standards or didn't. They get a report, a final report that has all kinds of feedback from the review team. Even if the standard wasn't met or was met, they still might get feedback, right? So it is the time that your peers are taking to create some thoughtful feedback for you about what you might be doing in your course. So anyway, they took this and they even made changes in their face-to-face, how they were approaching face-to-face because of that impact. So it is a powerful tool to disseminate quality and best practice because no one has the time or the resources to go through to review official review for every single course that you might offer, and certainly not across the campus, across online and face-to-face. So that's how it gets disseminated, and that's why QM has always focused on faculty instead of trying to focus on another piece of it. So because faculty control the quality of the course, both in terms of the design, but also in terms of the teaching. And so it's been really important to us to think about ways to promote that and to support it. So, and here's, at the end of the day, here's what it looks like if you sort of do the math. So based on that data, a single faculty member and 3 reviewers in the course review. So for that instructor whose course got reviewed, let's just say, if they teach 3 other courses, all of the students in those courses are being impacted by the positive changes that they made. And if you think about for the peer reviewers, the same thing, right? So they each have a set of courses, and the end of those courses are their students. And so their students are getting the benefit of this. So doing the math, the assumptions here are for a single course review, we know that there's 4 instructors involved in it, the peer reviewers and the person whose course is getting reviewed. If we assume that each of those individuals are making improvements in 3 of their courses, wherever, 3 of their courses, and each of those courses have 30 students, if you just take that as the assumption, a single course review could impact 360 students. If you look at, we've got over 7,000 certified courses now, but if you look at 7,000 certified courses, the same math, that's 2.5 million students who've had their online experience improved because of that process. So that's, for us, that's the sweet spot, right? That's where the dissemination happens. But again, it doesn't have to be through the review process, right? Faculty do this anytime you're taking a workshop, right, on teaching online or developing courses, you're taking things away that improve all the things that you do for your students. And so I think anytime we're not focusing on helping faculty do this and supporting faculty's championing quality, we're making a mistake. So I guess my last point here is that regardless of the type of implementation schools have of QM or what they're doing, we look to the faculty to be the champions for the quality. And that could be, and I think you do this anyway, because you're the ones who control the curriculum and the rigor of the courses and the student experience in general. But thinking about technology-enhanced education, I go to places where the faculty are just again it. They don't. Not just online education, but this movement to bring technology into the classroom and to use it in meaningful ways. And it is much better for faculty to take the position where they are going to engage but be champions of the quality rollout and quality use and staying focused on student success, because there's a lot of use of technology out there for technology's sake, right? And the people who need to be charged with standing up and ensuring that technology use is going to have a positive impact for students are the faculty. That's, in my mind, the faculty role. So in these discussions about technology and online, it's coming, it's happening, and finding ways to do it well is important, and building and not breaking, because that dialogue of disruption, I go to these events, I was talking to Eric about this earlier, and some of those events don't involve a lot of higher education institutions, and they certainly don't involve faculty. And so there's a discourse happening about, let's work around faculty. Faculty are resistant, faculty say no, we don't need faculty, we're going to work around it, we're going to create these systems. And it's really clear to me that what happens in those conversations is it very quickly loses focus on the quality of the student experience in the focus on the technology enhancements. And so it really is critical, I think, for faculty to be seen as both embracing and cautionary at the same time, but cautionary in terms of quality. Boundary spanning, I will say, you saw the slides about students really do prefer blended, and we're not really building a lot of blended courses, but we are actually using technology in many different ways in the classroom. And we'll come to a day where it's going to be hard to determine what's online versus what's face-to-face, because we're going to be very fluid in our modalities. And so being comfortable with what quality looks like with technology is going to be really important for every faculty member, not just the ones that sit over here and just do online, because that's going to be rare over time. So being facile with that's important, and then persist in being the protectors of quality, because if you don't, I don't know who will. And focusing on student success. And then, we have to talk about what the good work faculty are actually doing in this space to work against that narrative. So that's, so tell your story. So that's all I have for you today. So I'm interested in your thoughts and questions. I don't get out much, so really, I would love to talk.
So I was just noticing your slides, and Chloe too, that you see a mismatch between students' preference for hybrid that schools are creating mostly online.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, from my perspective, if I go out and ask students, what do you prefer, they also tell me hybrid.
Hybrid.
And then when I go and talk to the registrar about what are students asking for and what are students registering for, it's online. So have you noticed that mismatch between preference and behavior? And do you think that's part of what's driving the universities?
Well, yeah, so the difference between preference and, the preference and their actual actions. I think some of that is because, their interest in online is convenience, right? It fits into my schedule. If there were more opportunities and there was more flexibility so that they could mix and match, I think there would be. We're not even very good about talking about blended, though. Are we talking about a blended course where the students can take some online and some in the classroom? Are we talking about a blended program? And how is it blending? So as a field, we don't really have a handle on how we should be talking about this. So that was a very generic slide. So I think in theory, students want the best of both worlds. In practice, it's hard for us to give it to them, and it's hard for them to fit that in. So I think so I don't have an answer to your question. I think it's what that meant, but.
Other questions?
So okay.
Yep.
What are the two states that are doing it?
One.
So I have to blank out. Delaware.
I think it was just one.
Well, there actually are two now. So there's a couple of states where we may have one institution, and they may have left. So I don't know, but I do know that in some of the states we have entire systems that participate with us. So, for example, the North Carolina University system and the North Carolina Community College system. And now they're trying to figure out how those two systems can collaborate in this work. So it's really pretty impressive. The Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges participate as a whole group. So actually, the majority of institutions that participate with us, not the vast majority, but just the majority, do so as part of a system so that they can use those resources, and so they can share faculty reviewers and do different things like that. Anything else? All right, I did.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.